Okay, Mark, we went 20 minutes roughly without talking about quarterbacks. That
That's
might
got to
be
be
a
a
record.
record.
But we got to get to it now. And it's interesting because even though the 49ers did bring in a quarterback, obviously the biggest news concerning the quarterback room is Jimmy Garoppolo. After 6 years, his run is finally over in San Francisco. As for those of you watching on YouTube can see at the bottom, Jimmy Garoppolo signs a 3-year deal and $67.5 million with the Raiders. I know the guaranteed money was kind of if I saw multiple reports on it, but the matter of the fact is Jimmy Garoppolo is no longer with the Niners. And in fact, he's with the Raiders. So for all those Raider fans complaining about, who is Jimmy G? Is he Jimmy INT? He's Jimmy W, but he's not really responsible for wins. And Derek Carr's a better quarterback. Well, you're going to have to figure that one out for yourself. And Jimmy Garoppolo, for the first time in what feels like forever, will not be a topic of conversation in San Francisco this season.
Well, it might be. I don't know. It depends how he plays, I
True.
guess.
Yeah,
it depends how he plays with the Raiders. But on the Garoppolo versus Carr conversation, the market has told you that Jimmy Garoppolo does not sniff Derek Carr. Because, again, Garoppolo, as you can see there on the bottom, 3 years, $67.5 million. That's about $22.5 million per year. Remember what Derek Carr signed? $37.5 million per year. Daniel Jones was even higher than that, $40 million per year. Geno Smith, of course, with the Seahawks, $25 million per year. So the market, at least, is telling you that Jimmy Garoppolo is the worst of that bunch of four. Now, that doesn't always mean how teams across the league feel about them, but it's interesting, Evan. I know last week I asked you, I think I set the over-under around $27.5 million per year. Maybe 28.5. I don't really remember. You picked the under, and you were right. But correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't think you were expecting it to be this low. This seems like a bit of a bargain for the Raiders.
No, the number I had in mind was about 25 million, but I also wasn't sure he would get 3 years. Now, I mean, it doesn't pertain much to 49ers fans anymore, but when I was looking at his deal, there is a potential out after the first season for the Raiders. And if they so choose to bring him back, that second-year salary, I believe, drops down to roughly $15-ish million. And then if they want to release him after the second season, his cap hit would only be in the single digits. So the Raiders, honestly, I thought got a really good deal for Jimmy Garoppolo, and they have somewhat of a high pick. They can go out and get a quarterback, and so it seems like they're setting themselves up for Jimmy G to be a placeholder, which I think you and I were both on the same page. That would be the best role for him to either come in and compete for a job or hold the job while a rookie or a young quarterback is being developed. So, hey, Jimmy Garoppolo is quietly, by the end of this contract, should he fulfill it, make his way up to $200 million in career earnings. So even though I think it's a fair deal for the Raiders, and I expected Jimmy maybe to get a little bit more money, at the end of the day, he's a finesse king. I got to tip my cap.
Do you think Raider fans will be more happy with him as opposed to Derek Carr? Because I don't know. There are definitely parts of his game where you can say, all right, he's better than Derek Carr there. He generally is less turnover prone. He generally is better in the red zone. But he's not as flashy. Now, he's never played with a receiver, one singular receiver as good as Devontae Adams. So maybe that changes some things and he's able to open up the field a little bit more. I'm not so sure. I know there are a lot of Raider fans out there, including a number that work with us here at 95.7 The Game, who are happy with the decision. And I think it's more so because of the money and everything that you're talking about, Evan. It seems to be relatively friendly economically, like, money-wise. It seems to be team-friendly. But there is also a part of me, Evan, who we get to week 4 and the Raiders are 1-3 and Jimmy Garoppolo's only thrown for 3 touchdowns. I think you're going to be a gigantic segment of Raider fans who are as upset and done with Jimmy Garoppolo as the Niners have been for the last couple of years.
Yeah, I started sending some text messages out to a few of my friends. Obviously, we're friends with people at the station are Raiders fans. And then being from the Bay Area, I'm sure we both know a lot of Raiders fans. Yeah. And shocker, Mark, it was pretty split. Some people couldn't stand the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to play in the silver and black. And others were, this is actually kind of a smart deal. And I think the Raiders might have actually made a decent move. Knowing the Raiders, things will probably go south. But one thing that I did see was Devontae Adams actually talk about it a little bit. I think he put it on Instagram, just a blank picture with a statement that rocked in the last three. Don't about. So, I mean, at this point, Mark, if I'm Devontae Adams, I might be a little pissed that I got traded to a team, signed a max deal, thought I was going to be playing with a quarterback, and then now I can play with Jimmy Garoppolo. Just be Raiders fans. It might also be Raiders receivers that might not be too happy.
Yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. I'm not so sure it's going to be great, but let's think about what Raider fans should actually be rooting for. What would be best for the organization? Let's say, I mean, you're probably right. They're going to draft a quarterback with their first round pick. I don't know. Part of me thinks this is not the time to draft a quarterback. You run out there with Jimmy Garoppolo and your team sucks. Let's say that happens. And you get the first pick in next year's draft and you have one of the best quarterback prospects coming out in a really long time in Caleb Williams. That could be an option for the Raiders. I'm not saying that I think they're going to purposefully tank. Maybe there is someone good enough that they feel comfortable enough taking at the quarterback position with their first pick this year. But that's out there as well. I'm not so sure what's the best course of action for the Raiders. This does seem like a discount at a quarterback spot for a team that knows that this isn't the quarterback of the future. It's a stopgap, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, all 3 years, we will find out. But I think the other side of this, Evan, is this is also what's best for Jimmy Garoppolo. He had to get out of Santa Clara for his own good. I know he's had a lot of success here. It's been up and down, however, and he's had to deal with a lot of disappointment and a lot of blame has come his way. But he deserves a fresh start. He obviously knows Josh McDaniel from their time together with the Patriots. He feels comfortable enough in that system, of course. Otherwise, I'm sure he would not have agreed to this. But good for Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm happy he got an opportunity. I hope the Raiders give him a fair chance. It's yet to be seen. But he deserves this. So I'm happy for him, and I'm happy he gets to move on somewhere else.
Yeah, sorry if I broke up there for a second, Mark. I do want to ask you, and I'm curious what also listeners at home think about it. Like, if you had to pick a word to describe the Jimmy Garoppolo era, or just his play, what's the first thing that kind of comes to your mind?
The first word that came to mind for me was tenuous, because I don't know, it's been so up and down, and you kind of felt like it's been teetering on the edge of being done for a number of years now. I remember the year he got hurt at the end of the season before that they drafted Trey Lance. What was that? The 2019 season.
2020, I think.
2020 season. He threw 2 terrible interceptions the game up in Seattle against the Seahawks. The Niners lost to a middle of the pack Seattle team. And then he got hurt towards the end, and I think he missed the rest of the season. And I said, I think this is it. This is the end of the Jimmy Garoppolo era. That was a year before. Of course, he said see ya after the NFC Championship game loss to the Rams, and that was a year before when he actually had played his final game for the 49ers. So I was a couple years early on that. But it's kind of felt like that for a while, Evan. So off the top of my head, I don't know, tenuous is the word I would use to describe it, because it has felt like it's been teetering on the edge of disaster, on the edge of collapse for a while, and now it's finally over. So I don't know, I have to think about it a little bit more, but tenuous came to mind first.
Yeah, I don't think he's completely divisive, but polarizing was the first word that came to my mind, just because as much as you can talk about his shortcomings as a player versus how much money he's made from the organization, he does seem to have these strangely redeeming qualities, at least inside of the locker room and around the organization. So much to the point that, like you said, he probably felt like he was dead man walking when he got hurt in 2020, but played out the rest of his contract and then said see ya, but then got brought back and then turned that into nearly $70 million somewhere else. He has one of the more interesting, well, I don't know about interesting, but strange NFL careers for a quarterback because, and look, he's playing in a time when quarterbacks are making fistful of dollars left and right. And I mean, he's just been writing checks or picking them up. It's him and Don Yee have done a fantastic job at maximizing his talent because it's weird. Like in New England, a lot of people were not big fans of Jimmy Garoppolo. And after he left, they came out and said so, from Julian Edelman to Martellus Bennett. But then in San Francisco, everyone seems to love him to the point where George Kittle is wearing Feels Great baby jerseys after, the NFC Championship, one of which Garoppolo didn't even play. And now he's gone and people are raising the roof and they're happy. But then there's some that are also still saying this is a great deal for the Raiders. It's just, it is such a perplexing person that Jimmy Garoppolo is, and yet still seems to find both sides of the fence as far as supporters and detractors. I listened to a couple podcasts today about the 49ers, and one gave a glowing speech and a big thank you send off to Jimmy Garoppolo, and we're so happy for giving all you have for the organization and best luck. And the other one simply said, get the hell out of town, man. Like, I'm sick of this guy. Like, I am done, because he got all the blame and none of the credit dutifully deserved, because the guy was responsible for every loss but not responsible for every win. It's like the guy cannot find any gray space there. He is black or he is white, and it falls down to, I mean, really just what you value in a quarterback. Do you value wins? Do you value stats? Do you value, I don't know, how much a guy makes? He's in that weird space. And I don't know if too many quarterbacks can say the same.
You're right. He is. And you said something there that caught my ear. He, doesn't get credit for the wins, but he gets the blame for all the losses. I think that's an interesting aspect to this, because we are going to find out once and for all if Jimmy Garoppolo is a product of Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers, or if this, what he's shown with the 49ers is who he actually is. And I know there are people out there who think that this contract, again, you and I, both a little surprised that it was less than 23 million per year on average. Now it's not split up evenly into those numbers. You and I both thought it was going to be more. I thought it was going to be more than you did, but we both thought it was going to be higher than this. Is that the league saying, hey, Jimmy, we think Kyle Shanahan has a hand in your success? Is that what the league is saying? Is that what the general assumption is, the consensus around the NFL, around coaches, around general managers regarding Jimmy Garoppolo? Maybe that's why he didn't get as much money as Geno Smith or as Derek Carr. And of course, he was never sniffing 40 million like Daniel Jones did. That might just be more of a knock on the Giants than anything else. But I don't know. We're going to find out, I guess, once and for all, now that he's a starting quarterback, presumably outside of Kyle Shanahan's system. How does he perform? I, for one, am eager to find out. I'm not too confident it's going to be great. But we do perhaps finally get the answer to, is Jimmy Garoppolo good because of Kyle Shanahan, or is he good because he's actually good? I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, and look, he's going to be with Josh McDaniels, who is his offensive coordinator in New England, so he's got some familiarity there. I personally wish him the best of luck. Did no harm to me, even though he may have harmed a lot of fans here. But I'm curious, like you mentioned, I am curious to see what he does, because I do think you're onto something. It's a fair point of, like, a lot of teams maybe saw as like, well, this 7th round pick just came in and was arguably better than Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not so sure about this, but we'll see. We shall see.